I think I'm in.
Yes, you
I
are.
see your lips moving.
See them moving slightly out of sync. All right, well, we've got people tuned in here. We've got lots of exciting things to announce, so let's dive into it. Absolutely delighted to be hosting this Twitter Spaces today. We have the wonderful Paul Quay, CEO of Edge Wallet, and we have Zuko Wilcox of ZCash, I should say Electric Coin Company in particular. So welcome, guys. Let's chat about all things privacy and crypto.
Absolutely.
Right.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Especially
All right.
proud to have this rare moment of having Zuko on as well.
I know.
Nice.
He's a hard man to pin down for
Oh,
interviews.
yeah.
I've been trying for years. So
He's a busy man.
pretty excited to chat about some recent developments with Electric Coin
There's a good
Company.
reason
Some cool things
for
coming
this.
out. So Zuko, I want to dive into some news. And Paul, this is intrinsically linked to what Edge is all about. Because
this is Paul's news.
yeah, do you want me to introduce, or can I just hand this straight over to you for a big announcement?
Sure. Happy to kind of just go right into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm CEO and co-founder of Edge. For those that aren't too familiar with us, we're a self-custody app for cryptocurrency. Let's do buy, sell, and trade and transact. And we're excited to announce today integration of ZCash, and not just ZCash, but full shielded address support, because we believe pretty strongly in privacy. That's been one of the big initiatives that we've got in the company. I've been talking to Zuko for years now, trying to get. I remember Zuko, you came up to me and said, "Hey, we want to get ZCash integrated," and at the time, like Sapling wasn't really available yet, and it was like privacy required command line and waiting a few minutes to send a transaction. You guys have come such a long way since then. And so, now on a mobile device, people will be able to send and receive full shielded address transactions right inside of Edge. Right now, it's only available on Android, but soon, we're working on the iOS implementation. Zuko's team over at ECC have built a great platform SDK that's made this a lot simpler for application developers. We've been working with their team for, it feels like almost a couple of years now, kind of working out the kinks and the architecture for this platform. But we're proud to be able to launch it now on Android. Not only can people actually transact ZCash in shielded address mode, but they can actually even buy it. So we've partnered with one of our exchange partners so you can swap from most other assets into ZCash and receive it in your shielded address. So right now we're only supporting shielded address. There's no transparent address support right now. But in a way, I'm really excited about what maybe you're going to be able to talk about, Zuko, on being able to provide this hybrid that provides a high level of privacy with this compatibility with those old laggards, I like to call them, the people that just moving into the privacy world. But yes, people can buy. Soon you'll be able to also sell ZCash. If there's a little bit of a hiccup, we're going to have to work out with one of our exchange partners to swap out of ZCash. Why would you want to do that, though, right? But if you wanted to.
So do you disclose who the exchange partners are?
You can see it right inside of the app. The one exchange partner that does support ZCash and shielded address mode is SideShift. So Andreas Brecken, he's been in the space for quite some time. He's the founder of SideShift, and we are pushing a few other partners to get support in there. Some of them actually do, but it's just not exposed in their API. And we're also in the roadmap to get a partner to allow people to buy ZCash into a shielded address right from fiat. So that would be great, not having to go in through another crypto to get it.
Ooh, yeah, that would be a big deal.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to some of the future advancements, both on kind of a performance level as well as on a usability level. And the challenge for us, like, we believe a lot in privacy, and so we opted not to support transparent addresses, because once people receive them there, you kind of compromise the privacy. Exactly, but it's Zuko could probably.
What'd you say, Naomi?
A bold move.
A bold move. So incompatible.
Yeah, pushing the envelope. Yeah, that's interesting.
Right. Yeah, I give Zuko a bit of a hard time about trying to get this by default. We're just forcing the issue, but I know there's some developments coming down the pipe.
Yeah, it's what we call unified addresses. Coming soon. Probably January.
Pretty exciting.
For at least
we can
most
dive
of us.
into those as well, because like Halo's coming out, Halo 2, I should say, is that what it's technically called? And really interesting developments to do with privacy by default. We've got unified addresses. It's really interesting. But before we dive into all of those, I just want to stay on the Edge side of things for the moment. Paul, I am so glad that you guys finally support ZCash, because Edge is my go-to multi-coin wallet. It's what I use my day-to-day transactions. I'm buying at coffee shops every day, and I can't use ZCash with that wallet. So it's like you got to, back and forth, different
coffee
devices
shops in
as
your
well.
town sell coffee for crypto?
Of course they do,
Oh my
Zuko.
gosh.
Would I choose to live
Is it good
anywhere
coffee?
else? What is the point in living in a place where you cannot have sovereignty over your money? That is the
Can I come
question
visit?
I pose to all. Absolutely. How does March sound, or February? Let's do this.
Absolutely.
So, I'm delighted that you guys are now integrated, and I'm pretty impressed that you guys are going the full shielded route as well, because I know that you guys held off until you could support shielded, and that was a bit complicated. So how complicated was it, and is this process going to be easier now with Halo? So first of all, to Paul, and then Zuko, you can probably take the second part of that question.
Okay. Definitely early on it was very complicated. It was over our head to be able to build a lot of the tooling required to create and detect shielded address transactions. Like Zuku's team has some of the best cryptographers in the world that understand zero knowledge proofs, and while I might understand cryptography, once it gets to zero knowledge proofs, I just say that's above my pay grade. And being able to write the code that can create those types of transactions just simply wasn't available, especially for a mobile application. And then the development of the toolkit that could do that was also just a heavy lift on the ECC, Electric Coin Company side, Zuku's team. But then integration of that into a mobile app, like what is the interface to that SDK, was probably hours, if not days, of back and forth saying, okay, well, here's what we need in order to be able to surface the transactions into our applications. And of course, it's then also beta testing. We came in and tried to use this SDK in the very early days when it was still kind of under development. And we dedicated a team member about a day a week over 6 months, because we'd start developing, hit a roadblock, the ECC team would come in, help out with that roadblock and maybe make some additional developments that would unblock us. It comes back to us for a couple of days. So it's a lot of back and forth. That's what happens when you're kind of no pun intended, like bleeding edge of this new software and new technology. So it definitely was a challenge, but I like challenges. We're in crypto not for the easy stuff, right? Crypto's not easy.
If it was easy, anyone could do it.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone could do it. It's not challenging. And what I love about working in the space is, and the technology in general, is when you're trying to solve hard stuff, you get the sharpest people, because sharp people like solving hard problems. And so it was a challenge for us. I'm sure a challenge for the ECC team, but that's when we come together and let's make this happen. So it sounds like we've got some developments that will both make it a bit easier in the future, and also potentially make the user experience a little bit easier as well, that the ECC team's working on.
For sure. So the two user experience things that I am aware of that are the biggest next improvements are the address types. Like that's currently, so I got my girlfriend to install Edge this morning and showed me her QR code, and I sent her 0.0001 ZEC from my wallet, and it totally just worked, because my wallet is bilingual. It does both T addresses and Z addresses. Edge only does Z addresses, so it all just works smoothly. But if somebody wanted, like if she wanted to withdraw ZCash from a Coinbase ZCash account today, you can't withdraw to today's Edge wallet, since Edge only has Z addresses and Coinbase only sends to T addresses, right? So there's this like user experience, like toe stub. Now you've got to find some third intermediary to get from A to B. And so that's what unified addresses are all about. It's launching in the beginning of the year, which is this QR code that Coinbase knows how to send to, and for wallets that support it, which will hopefully be Edge once it launches. Even if Coinbase even if by then Coinbase still hasn't upgraded to sending to Z addresses, then Edge Wallet will have a T address that Coinbase can send to, and then once the money goes to that, Zcash goes to that wallet, then that wallet shields it. So you get like privacy and Coinbase compatibility, and with only one action on the part of the user, which is just the normal withdraw action, like paste in your address. That's the whole idea. That's it. But I think it's great.
That's pretty awesome. I do think that there is a little bit of confusion for people. Like when I first got involved with ZCash, and I put it off for a while. Like I always loved the idea, but I put it off for a while because I was like, it sounds complicated,
Right.
and there's like some things are shielded, some things are not, and so and when I finally dug into it, I was like, actually, it's pretty easy to understand. It's literally just like either use a transparent address if you want it to be transparent, or you use a Z address if you want it to be shielded. It's really just a matter of which address you're placing and which QR code you're using. And so it's interesting that even someone within the crypto space would put this off for so long, because that would seem like an insurmountable barrier.
Amazing.
And you've even got rid of that,
I
right?
agree.
Like you guys have just like crossed that like obstacle
this is
out.
one of the things I've learned over the years is that 2 is way, way, way more than 1. Right? Like, you tell people, okay, you've got 2 options, they just stop right there, right? Like, never mind,
Bitcoin now
I'll
is
come back
4.
later when it's down to 1.
And Bitcoin now is 4 different address types, for Christ's sake.
Oh, I know.
I know, right?
And like Naomi, I've never figured out what the 4 different address types are, or when I need to use one instead of the other. I'm just like, never mind. I'll come back when they've got it back down to fewer.
Never mind. I'll stick with ZCash.
Yeah,
We have half as many
ZCash just
addresses.
But yeah, what Naomi was saying is, it turns out it's not too hard to use Zcash with 2 different address types, but for a lot of people, that is too hard. Like, that's too much to think about. And so the whole idea of unified addresses is going forward, there's only one Zcash address type, and everyone, including Coinbase and Edge and everyone else, should support unified addresses because they match everyone's requirements. And then for the users, you don't have to think about it. And by the way, it's more far looking, but that also means unified addresses could continue to be the one and only QR code or address type, even while we do other future upgrades like L2s and Crosschain and different tokens on Zcash, and anything would all fit into just having one address type the whole time for the user's sake.
I want to kind of highlight something that Zuku said, but Zuku, you kind of let it fly under the radar. And it's not even the unified address part, the part that I was excited about. Because I remember when I first heard about unified addresses, I kind of shitted on them, I'll be honest. I said, oh, great, you're just going to make it
because it sounds like a compromise.
It sounds like a compromise where you're going to allow these exchanges like Coinbase to continue supporting these transparent addresses, and then they'll never port over. Right. And it would just end up compromising our privacy or have this incompatibility. But you said one thing which did get me excited about this feature is the fact that it's not just a unified address, but you can receive into a transparent address and it will automatically shield it.
Exactly.
That, to me,
that makes all the difference.
Kind of flipped my opinion a bit more about unified addresses.
Right.
It's the 2 combined. It's both unified, and you have the automatic conversion to shielded to your shielded pool, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
Shielded pool of funds. That made it where it's like, okay, we can support this unified address and support the transparent side of it. But people still get to retain a good amount of their privacy even if they receive untransparent. And then just for clarification, the implementation of Edge, while it only will show a shielded address, it can send to a T address. So you can send your money to a service like Coinbase, but then you can't get it out, unfortunately. So just don't do that. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really a good point, Paul. Thanks for calling that out. And we have like a definition or a marketing name in our mind, which is shielded by default. A wallet, and this is a property of wallets. It's not a property of the network protocol or the miners or whatever. But a wallet is shielded by default if it supports the latest and greatest shielded protocol, and it supports unified addresses. Then you can tell the user, use such and such a wallet. It's got the shielded by default nature. And what that means to you is you don't have to think about it. You don't have to learn multiple different types of things, but all your money will be shielded.
Or auto shielding. I think that would be a kind of cool marketing name.
Yeah, auto shielding is one of the 2 components of shielded by default. But the other one is you have to support the current thing. So the current thing is upgrading in January from Sapling, which you mentioned earlier. So back in ancient history, Zcash launched with Sprout, and that was when you and I first started talking, and that's where you had to have like Linux and like 4 gigs of RAM in order to use it. And that was a really great step forward. Like that was the first time zero knowledge proofs were possible on Linux and only 4 gigabytes of RAM, right? And like were actually useful for anything. But it was totally a non-starter for your cell phone. And then Sapling was the second generation of ZCash zero knowledge payment technology, and that's the one that we're currently using that is live on Edge today that I sent a transaction this morning. It only takes like 4 seconds or something on most phones to generate one of those and send it. So that's the current generation. That was a huge step forward. And then in January, we're launching the network is activating the next upgrade to zero knowledge proof technology, which is called Halo. And the biggest difference, there's quite a few improvements, but the biggest one is it eliminates the whole concept of trusted setup, which is something that Sprout and Sapling had to start with because that was the best science we had way back then. Anyway, so for shielded by default, you've got to support the latest and greatest, which starting in January is you've got to support the new Halo technology, and you've got to have auto shielding so that the user has compatibility with anyone else who's got the right, latest upgrade, and they get privacy without having to fiddle with taking the extra steps.
So I definitely don't want to brush over that last bit because I think that, like, in the past, I mean, it's interesting, Zcash comes out, it's the first real-world implementation of zero-knowledge proofs, which was an idea that came out a long time ago but didn't really have a real-world application. Mm-hmm. And then Zcash came along and was like, hey, this is a really good use case for it. We can actually have fungible money. We can actually have financial sovereignty because we have privacy in transactions. And yet, it was so cumbersome when you guys first released it. And I've read tweets from yours, Zuko, and you said, listen, we just needed to get this technology out there because we knew what was coming down the road. But once the cat's out of the bag with this technology, it's useful for everyone and you can just run with it and iterate on it. We just needed to get this launched. And I think that's really smart because since then, I mean, the main criticisms that have been levied against Zcash, early days, super slow. Like I was using Sprout and I was like, I had the Linux computer there. I don't know anything about this. I had someone else helping me with it. And we were like mining Zcash and we got like nothing from it because the computer's just like, I'm about to explode, because it's doing this high computational stuff. And so then, Sapling changed the game and Halo is even better and you've got recursive proofing, which just in terms of scalability is a game changer. But then the other two things that people levied against Zcash, trusted setup was a huge thing. With Sprout, you had people like Peter Todd going out to the middle of a desert with a Faraday cage built around his computer, brand new computer he bought specifically for the purpose. And it was like this big thing that's kind of shielded in mythos. And it's like the cabal of Zcash. Yeah. What are they hiding? You had to trust them. And then Sapling still had this like aura of mystery, even though there were hundreds of people involved with that trusted setup. And now Halo is completely eliminating that, which I think is a super important thing to bring home to people because it is one of the main criticisms. And then the third thing, obviously, is that, well, it's not private by default and all of that. And as you just kind of showed to Paul, like it's really important for people getting into crypto. They need a way to buy it. And unfortunately, exchanges do not like privacy coins. So there's this very interesting workaround where there are exchanges where you can buy Zcash that are very popular and easy to use. And you can get out your money and your wallets are going to shield that by default now. Right. So it's just going to bring a whole bunch more privacy to the network. Yeah, that's something. So I think those are... Go ahead, finish. I'm done. Hi, love to you.
That's something we've learned over the years is that privacy, how do I put this? The core protocol, you need some really sophisticated core protocols for privacy, but the real focus point of where the user gets privacy is not the core protocols, it's their wallet. Right? Like if somebody says to me, a non-sophisticated person, they're not a computer programmer or a hacker or whatever, they're just like, how do I get privacy for a thing? I need to recommend to them like an app and say, that app, that'll give you privacy, right? And for a crypto protocol, that's a wallet. That's what gives you privacy. If it does.
Yeah, I think that's important because like you also have different things on other networks. dandelion. A lot of people don't realize, well, that's not something at protocol level. That's something that people who run nodes implement, and it's entirely voluntary, and you can't force people to run that. Like, people get this strange idea of what's default in a network and what is kind of these add-ons that people could pick or choose whether or not to include. So wallets, maybe Paul will throw it back to you in that side of things. So you guys did hold off until you could integrate shielded addresses. You guys didn't want to just be one of those wallets that has T addresses. And there are lots of wallets out there that integrated Zcash, but were just like, listen, we're just going to do T addresses. And you guys went the opposite route. So talk to me about why that was important for Edge as a principle, just promoting privacy.
So definitely as a principle, I wanted to support the privacy by default nature of assets that had that support. So much to probably Zuku's, disdain, we had supported Monero pretty early on, and that because although the cryptography may be not really strong,
no disdain.
Okay,
and all privacy is great. Anyone pushing the privacy envelope, we love them.
And so while they don't have the same, privacy set, the anonymity set that Zcash has, they did have that by default, right? And I really, really appreciate the default. Even though the tooling was difficult to use, it was worth it for us. And one of the things that I had considered is, even though I knew it was coming down the pipe, I knew that the privacy mode of Zcash was coming down the pipe, sapling was coming, and so were the toolings. I knew that it would be a bit of a challenge to deal with two types of wallets inside of a user's account. One that has the transparent mode and only the transparent mode, which uses a different code base, which uses kind of our Bitcoin-related code base.
Right.
And then having to create one that uses a large code base written by the ECC team that massages both the transparent and the privacy mode. And so having to kind of manage these two types of code bases where one may not be able to seamlessly combine the balances of the other, at least it was unknown at that time. I didn't want to have that level of confusion. And so I said, okay, we're going to hold off both from an ideological point of view, because I want to be able to say that like Zcash is supported only in this mode. And then also from a user experience point of view, to be able to say, you don't have to deal with these two types of balances. And I really like one thing that the ECC team is doing with the upgrade to the node trusted setup network is that you'll be able to still see your sapling, your transparent, and your what was that? The next network.
Oh well, it's called Orchard, like Sprout
Orchard,
sapling Orchard.
And
the underlying zero knowledge proof technology is called Halo.
Got it. Okay, so Orchard with Halo technology, they've built a toolkit for developers where the sapling and Orchard balances will still show up as one. And correct me if I'm wrong, Zuku, you'll be able to send a transaction that might spend some money from sapling, some money from Orchard into a single output. Is that correct?
I don't 100% know if that's right or wrong. I do know that there's another aspect of shielded by default, which is called auto migration. So we talked about auto shielding. If somebody sends you to your T address, like you're withdrawing from Coinbase and they still haven't gotten around to upgrading in this hypothesis, it goes to your T address, then auto shielding means move it from your T address to the shielded pool. And what you would do is, what your wallet will do for you is move it to the latest and greatest shielded pool, which is going to be the Orchard shielded pool when it activates in January. And then also there's auto migration. If somebody sends you to your sapling address, or if you still have money left over from before Orchard activated in your sapling address, then your wallet will move that from the sapling shielded pool to the Orchard shielded pool for you.
Got it. So almost the exact same experience for the end user, where they're not having to deal with different pools of money. Exactly. And then, I've only got so much of sapling and so much of this, which has always been a criticism I've had for certain protocols, even to some degree Lightning, where is it possible for us to combine these balances and not have to know how much money is in each? And so having put that into the toolkit, or the SDK as we call it in developer speak, is hugely valuable. And so I definitely appreciate it and look forward to being able to integrate that and give users that more seamless experience.
It's interesting. I want to kind of dig into what you said earlier, Paul, where you were like, much to your disdain, Zuko, the thing, because you mentioned another coin, and as tribes in crypto, we must automatically hate all other tribes. I want to dig into that because that's particularly prevalent in the privacy community, and I kind of want to push back against that idea. I mean, personally, just my take, and I don't know where both of you stand, but anything that gives back people a semblance of privacy is great. Like, I do a channel that literally every video I talk about, it's like one small step people can take to bring back your privacy. And without a doubt, I'll get 100 comments on the video saying, yeah, but the NSA is still spying in this other way, therefore what you're doing is dumb and you're stupid. And it's just like, every time I'm like, that's not the point. Anything you could be doing is great. Moving, the envelope forward, even if it doesn't cover the whole gamut, like anything that pushes privacy forward is great, because the first obstacle to privacy is normalizing it. People have lost the idea of privacy in the digital space, and it's really sad to see. And so now you have these absolutists who are like, if 100% privacy or it's nothing at all. And unfortunately, the nothing at all camp is winning. So I would love to see a transition in the culture of the crypto community. Like, I mean, I'm like, right now it's interesting. Monero is looking at different like protocols. They're looking at something that actually Firo, another privacy coin, developed called Lalanta Spark. There seems to be like perhaps that tribalism is dissipating as we realize who our real enemies are, and it's anyone who wants to take privacy away from us. I would just love to see more of that. I would love to see the privacy community say, like, listen, if this helps your privacy at all, use it, because it's better than credit cards. It's better than using central banks. It's better than using everything that completely tracks you. Anything you can do, any small step you can take, like, please do it. So, like, do you think, like, in order to get from here to there, where we are just kind of bringing more people into the privacy realm, like, what do we need to be doing as a community? Maybe start off with you, Zuko, because you're great at that. You're great at culture building. You've done a great job in the ZCash community with that.
You're the one who has a podcast every week with an actionable, reasonable step that people could actually take. I definitely agree with you that tribalism is like shooting ourselves in the foot while our enemies laugh at us. There's something that's really difficult. It's difficult for me. It's difficult for everyone. And I actually, not to like butter you up, but I think Naomi's podcast series is maybe the best thing I've ever seen with regard to this, which is telling people that's both actionable and actually helps. Because you don't want to tell someone something that's like theater, or they think they're getting a benefit and they're not. I'll give you an example. I talked to some people recently, multiple people recently, and they said, oh, we don't want to be exposed to some enemies like stealing our information and taking advantage of us. And these are people who have real legitimate reasons to think that could happen to them. And then they said, so we use Telegram. And I was just like, forehead slap, right? Like somebody told them that Telegram protects them, which is just false, basically. Like, we could go into details, and Naomi has gone into extensive details on her podcast. You should look it up. But if somebody asks me and I have like one syllable answer, the answer is no, right? Anyway, so my point is we do want to be responsible about advising people so that if they take their advice, they're actually better off, right? And they don't misunderstand. But I really agree with you that the current state of the world is like just despair and nihilism, right? There's people just say, oh, there's nothing anyone can do. Some mega corporation or somebody just controls my life and I'm helpless. And so we want to encourage people, you don't have to live like that. Like, there are options, and here's one, try it. And the other thing I want to point out is, aside from like how we communicate and how we educate and all that stuff, the other thing that I think is super, super important is user experience in practice, right? Like when I get someone to start using Signal, it pretty much works okay, right? It does what they expect. And so that's great that I keep using it, right? And so that's why I'm really excited about unified addresses in ZCash, is because it eliminates some education steps. Now instead of teaching anyone anything, you can just say, here, try this. And then when they try it, it works, and they keep using it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that privacy fatigue is real, and the absolutists need to be aware of that. And I completely agree. Making sure people have accurate information about the state of their privacy is super important. A lot of people just don't realize where the privacy leaks are. So let them know where those are, but then actually give them a step forward to say, well, here's a small step you can take which will help it in this way. What's difficult is when people come out and say, these are all of the ways that your privacy is being violated. These are all the things you need to do. And it ends up being like a 5-year seminar and they still don't have the basics of it because it's really that complex, And privacy fatigue, it's hard for the average person who is not that technologically adept to even get them to say, like, you need to use a command line. They'll be like, I had no idea what words
I've
you
tried
just
that
said.
so many times.
And so,
I've spent so many hours trying to get people to use Linux command lines to get something.
Yeah, but like Linux will give you better privacy, right? But it's Apple that brought privacy, a semblance of privacy to the mainstream. They did more for bringing privacy to people than, the fringes who are using, esoteric devices, because they said, listen, you don't need to worry about it. We've got all this covered for you. You just use your device and we've taken care of encryption. That device is encrypted, right? And so it's like, it tends to be the developers, the people creating these products that provide that privacy for the mainstream. And both of you guys are doing that. So Zuko Electric Coin Company, by making that user experience better, you guys are kind of handing that privacy to people in a silver platter and Edge Wallet, just by saying, hey, this is a shielded address. We are making sure that you understand that this is private. I think that's really important because you're by default giving people that privacy. Now we have shielded by default addresses, unified addresses. I think all of that is just such a leap forward in terms of user experience and actually bringing usable privacy to people that they don't really have to think about.
Let me add something else in. You said like developers provide it to the users. I totally agree, but I also think there's real demand from like a business and mass like evolution of society and government and all governments and companies. And I'm really interested to see what Paul says about this. Like how many people are downloading the new Android version of Edge right now, Paul? And also when iPhone, sir. But I think there's real demand. I think there's this false narrative, like this self-serving narrative that's invented by like people who are benefiting from exploiting other people's data, and then they make up these stories in the newspapers that say, "Oh, it turns out people don't care about privacy, so it's fine that I'm doing this." That's totally false, I think. But we're going to see when all these different apps and services and products out there have real end user protecting privacy, and it's totally easy and natural. You don't have to educate yourself in order to do it. I think those are really going to have much more uptake than the exploitative alternative. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, it's like this. Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was actually going to chime in on pretty much exactly what both you and Zuko were talking about with a little bit of historical evidence. I think the key word from the viewpoint of what do we have to build to get it adopted is not to go down the path of let perfect be enemy of the good. And I think cryptography has had a history of that being an issue, with some cases being a good example of where it wasn't. So I know you've talked in a lot of your speeches and whatnot on stage about like SSL, and you go back down in history with the implementation of SSL, right. And it is admittedly a compromise. Like SSL is not perfect. Like we have these certificate providers that we have to trust, but at least there's quite a few of them. And a lot of people really didn't want that architecture for our internet, for secure sockets on the internet. But let's look at a case where it failed. There was a lot of discussion. How do we have secure encrypted email? We don't have that. There's no standard for that. And one of the challenges in the battles in that world of cryptography for email is how do we share the public key, right? Which is the same thing with SSL. And a lot of cryptographers and the purists, almost like the 100% maximalist, meaning it has to be perfect or we don't do it, said, well, then we couldn't figure out a good way to share the public key, so we just won't do it. So now we have full, pure, unencrypted email everywhere that we transact with email addresses, and hence why it's kind of nice to have something like Signal. And I've even had, speaking of Signal, you'd mentioned it is buttery smooth. It's actually better than like worse applications like Telegram and WhatsApp. It actually hit both angles, user experience and privacy. But I would even have someone criticize Signal and go, wait, it needs my phone number? I'm like, yes,
that's
it's
an
not
imperfection.
100%. That's exactly, it's an imperfection. It's not perfect, but look at what user experience it gave the users by requiring a phone number. Now I can see everyone in my address book who's using Signal and message them, as opposed to having to do this discovery mechanism. What's your handle? Where's your QR code that I need to scan? And these are, once again, there are some compromises. So you accept that. You know that, okay, my phone number is going out to some service. All right, they know that I'm using Signal. But do they know the content that I'm sending to this other individual? Do they know what I'm saying? No, they don't. And so you accept that compromise, but can you imagine if everybody was using Signal as opposed to using SMS or, God forbid, Telegram? And you're right, Apple did exactly this. I like to say that Apple built the most widely used, and I could be a little bit wrong about this because there's a few others, but probably most widely mass adopted use of end-to-end encrypted messaging with iMessage.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is that you have people that absolutely care nothing about privacy using it. And
iMessage and shockingly enough, Facebook's WhatsApp are the two biggest. And
Facebook's WhatsApp. And I think probably the one that's got more adoption than iMessage because it's on Android. Although now that iMessage is also on Android, it might actually surpass WhatsApp. But the one thing that I really liked about that, which is a point that I want to make, is I think privacy really doesn't get achieved unless it's adopted by the people that don't care. So as me, someone that does care about privacy, if I want to message a friend, all they are is on SMS, then I'm screwed. Right? I get nothing. Right? So really, you need that collective to be on those privacy platforms for the small demographic of us that care about it. Then we actually get it. Because I think right now we're in this phase, especially pre-Signal, where there were these, the cypherpunks who cared a lot about it and they communicated with each other.
I use PGP so much.
Yeah, exactly. But then no one else had a PGP application that could read it and secure their key, blah, blah, blah. That suddenly we didn't really have good privacy because you knew that they were communicating within that little bubble of cryptographers. So both privacy by default and privacy built with an experience that the people that don't care get it. And that's how we get it, madly adopted.
Thinking along those lines was why I decided to do ZCash in the first place. The backstory is these scientists, like Matt Green from Johns Hopkins University, and a bunch of other scientists had invented the protocol concept of how to use zero-knowledge proofs in a Bitcoin-like blockchain. And Matt Green called me and said, "Do you want to make this into a real, live, industrial-strength thing that anyone can use?" And I said, I don't want to do a niche thing. Right? There's no point in making a thing if only 0.1% of the people are using it, then it's not going to improve the whole world the way we want. And then I thought about it and called him back the next day because I realized that actually the 99% of people who just need to get their paycheck and have their savings, and companies that need to make business deals and buy materials and sell product, and basically everyone needs privacy for every normal thing. And so that's why I called him back and said I was going to do ZCash.
Well, we're glad that you did, Zuko. Definitely one of the better decisions someone could have made. So let's talk about the future of ZCash is going down. We already talked about Halo upgrade coming. You've also been talking, and I've seen Twitter threads with you and Vitalik throwing it back and forth, where he's like, you gotta go with proof of stake. And you're like, interesting. And I saw you shared a while ago a post from, was it Sia, that talked about kind of the problems of proof of work mining, the kind of corruptibility and capture of those markets, and just how proof of stake could be an alternative. How seriously is ZCash looking at proof of stake, and what led you guys to be exploring that option?
Oh, totally serious. So a couple of months back, 3 months back, I've lost track, ECC put out a blog post saying reasons why proof of stake could be good. Reasons why a Zcash-based proof of stake could be more valuable than a proof of stake-based Zcash should be more valuable than a proof of work-based Zcash, and more useful and more acceptable to more people, and better serve the Zcash mission of bringing economic freedom to everyone. And then there was a debate within the Zcash community, which was pretty clearly on the side of proof of stake. There was definitely some concerns and reservations from multiple parties, but the obvious majority of the Zcashers valued the positive promise of proof of stake over the concerns. And so then, just last Friday or so, Electric Coin Company put out our next 3-year roadmap, which focuses on switching to proof of stake. And we can only do that because we have high confidence that the whole community would come along with it, and like that chain would be the dominant chain. And we only would do it if we thought that was the case, but we do. So we're, well, I mean, to be 100% honest, we're still currently prioritizing the Halo launch going smoothly because it's like super complicated and dangerous to upgrade the like aircraft engines while in flight, and also to get all the sort of like partners like Edge Wallet to be able to come along without any disruption or excess work required to make everything go smoothly. So that's really what we're still doing is like double, triple, quadruple checking on the Halo upgrade and making sure everything's smooth and it's going to go off in January. But we've committed that for the next 3 years, our research and development roadmap is proof of stake and interoperability and making our own wallet inside ECC.
That's pretty exciting.
And the interoperability could have various forms, but one way or another, all the blockchains are going to start bleeding together, and users are not going to care which blockchain they're on, or no. It's going to be up to the wallet, really, to protect the user and like use their funds wisely and everything. And the user doesn't want to know or care.
Interesting. So when you talk about that interoperability under the hood, you're talking about like all kinds of different chains, like all like this multi-chain universe where we may be transacting, maybe the wallet's deciding, like figuring out an algorithm to decide which is the most profitable point for you to be spending at a given time. Like, is that where you see us going?
I hadn't thought of that. That's like a good idea for the
kind of fluidity.
That's a neat idea for a wallet to do. Like, you could imagine.
I'll take note. All right.
You could imagine that the merchant that's selling you the coffee prefers like Bitcoin or whatever, but you have like ZCash or whatever in your wallet. You can imagine that you sort of scan the QR code and your wallet just quotes prices to you in ZCash, right? And things like this already happen, like the SideShift thing that Paul's already partnered with, Edge has already partnered with. And, there are these people that will give you a credit card that withdraws like Zcash out of your Coinbase account every time you spend money. And then the merchant is getting US dollars and the customer is paying out of Zcash and stuff like that. So the whole interoperability future that we're imagining is making that decentralized, right? That already exists, and it is rapidly, the technology is getting deployed to make that decentralized so that it's completely, uncensorable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We know we already do this today with just government money. So you swipe a dollar-based credit card and you're suddenly paying in pesos. You want euros and someone is swiping with Canadian dollar cards. So we kind of already do this today, but obviously in the centralized world with a lot of banks and financial institutions as intermediaries, it actually does excite me to see projects such as like Chainflip and ThorChain, which are bringing that type of cross-chain conversion and bridging into the more decentralized world. And especially as chains start to scale, that can become faster. Obviously, there's a delay when you use a more centralized service. To hats off to like Eric Voorhees and Shapeshift, they had pioneered that in the early days when fees were low and you could kind of take an unconfirmed transaction. You could effectively do exactly what you said. Zugu, scan a QR code for Bitcoin and pay for it with Litecoin. And they would be the intermediary that would quickly shift between the two. But now taking that and putting it into the much more distributed, decentralized type of alternatives, that super excites me. And that is definitely a direction that we're going. Maybe not from a payments point of view yet, right? Really more just to be able to go back and forth between different assets that you hold. But the future can be flowing through these DEXs into someone else's wallet, where that's what they wanted to receive versus what you wanted to send.
So sorry if this is a hardball that I didn't warn you for, but if you use SideShift for doing this exchange in wallet, does that mean you have to exclude all Americans from that feature?
Currently, yes, but we are working with other people, other exchanges, and hopefully getting support for ZCash into protocols such as ThorChain. And it's my understanding to my understanding, it totally can happen. There's nothing that's restricting that from being possible.
It's even better than that. It's totally possible, but also, as of like a month ago, the ZCash Open Major Grants Committee, which is this independent thing that has nothing to do with me or ECC, but has a lot of Zcash from the blockchain. So those guys, and Eric Voorhees himself, who we just all celebrated a minute ago, and the Thorchain devs all got together and threw in for a development team to do that integration. So I don't know when exactly, but I'm going to hold my breath.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
I've heard that it's like early next year they're hoping to have this. So that was one of the most exciting things, because I think when you have true privacy with your money and when you have a decentralized method of exchanging between different currencies, that's like the mecca of sovereign living.
Now it's up to you.
I mean, it's amazing. It's like I just love that. I love this decentralized future that we're just like rocketing towards. It's just so exciting. And like on your point, Paul, I will mention that even though I see every time we mention like a Coinbase, you know, and a T address, like you can see, like you start to like get the disdain in your face, the glare, the judgment. But I will just add that like to this day is the absolute most private way I have found to purchase cryptocurrency. And I've tried everything. I've tried decentralized methods. I've tried BISC. I've tried all of these methods that don't have liquidity. The most private way to get into cryptocurrency from fiat, because we still haven't figured out a decentralized version of that, fiat on-ramp, and a lot of us get paid in fiat, and it's, you know, just like to get our money out of that is difficult. Most private way, I've said that for the third time, but we're going for it now. Go onto any of these centralized exchanges, go onto Coinbase, go onto any of them, buy ZCash, get KYC'd, doesn't matter. You know, they know exactly how much ZCash you're purchasing, put it in your address, great, you've taken it out of the exchange. Just put it over into a Z address. It disappears from the blockchain. No one knows when you spend your money ever again. It could disappear out of existence. You could lose your key. Anything could happen. No one will ever know because of the wonderful joy of zero knowledge proofs. So although people do turn their nose up at this idea of transparent addresses and you using Coinbase of all things, a centralized entity, it is absolutely the most private way to get your money into crypto. I've tried everything. I've tried everything from a principle standpoint, because an individual should have the right to spend their money when they want to spend it. And so, you know, giving those tools to people is like my primary goal in life. Figure out how to do stuff, teach people how to do it. And hands down, I mean, it's not something that just gives you plausible deniability where you're like, yeah, I'll throw it into a mixer. It may or may not be my coin. Could be, but you can't prove it. It's just not good enough. Put it into something where it completely eradicates it from the chain, and you've just reclaimed like power of your money. So nice tip for people who are getting involved with this stuff.
That's a great rant.
You know, they can.
Somebody
I get into the habit of rants these days. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I like get into this thing where I'm like, down with the man. Here's the way to reclaim your life, yo. And then everyone's just like, Mimi, calm down. This is just a Twitter Spaces. What is wrong with you? All right.
Gemini's good too, by the way. I like Gemini and Coinbase.
Well, Gemini's better than Coinbase because you can get money out, but Gemini has lower threshold for how much money you can trade at a time. So if you're wanting to send your money over, and with the fees structure and everything, and
sorry, I'm just teasing. I say you're going to the same Coinbase.
Well, Gemini allows you to withdraw.
Because you can withdraw to your Z address from Gemini. Hello.
All right, you win. It is superior in that regard.
I'm sorry,
all right, so let's. I was going to see if anyone has questions from the audience.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the moment. No one has their hand up. I don't know if hand up is a thing that happens on Twitter Spaces. This is my first
I know, we'll have to forgive us there. We've got
I'm looking at it.
Twitter Spaces here, so if anyone does have a question for me.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's anyone, but if you do have questions, now is the time to ask it. Otherwise, let's
Aren't
start
they supposed
to wrap
to post
up here.
tweets for their questions?
Maybe, but I've got a request from Thor Torrens. I'm just gonna prove him. All right, Thor, you are live. Go for it. What have you got to say? Don't make it PG. I don't know what's happening to this video. Oh, can't hear.
Hey, guys. Hey there.
There he is.
Hey, guys. How you?
What's your question, Thor?
Yeah, I have a question. Someone actually texted me a question, so I'm going to read it to you guys and see what you say, okay?
Nice.
So they said, what do you think about implementing similar systems to things like Algorand? He said, I use the Algorand wallet and transactions. They're instant. Like you said, Zuko, user experience is big. When will we get that level in the protocol?
Solid question, and definitely one of the biggest challenges for scaling, not just scaling throughput of transactions, but actually making individual transactions fast to confirm, which actually would help on the use case of being able to spend one coin, but then automatically convert to another that would be received by a merchant or someone you wanted to send to. Yeah, anything on the roadmap for that? That actually is a very interesting and a big challenge.
It's already pretty good in ZCash. If you open a ZCash wallet and send a payment from one ZCash wallet to the next, it's already fast enough that it's feels good. I buy my coffee with ZCash every day. But
do you really? Where do you live in the world, Zuko, that allows you to buy your coffee with
visit
ZCash
Boulder,
every
Colorado,
day?
and Longmont, Colorado. They both have ZCash accepting coffee shops.
That's awesome.
And on the roadmap that we mentioned, it's actually likely to improve this quite a lot, because one of the many benefits of switching to proof of stake is faster finality, which means that the recipient wallet can be sure, it can go ahead and show you, like, you got the $3 worth of ZCash, it's okay to give the guy the coffee, and it can show you that in fewer seconds, or like 3 seconds or something. So so we expect to improve that radically. But also, I encourage everyone to go install a wallet and try it today. It's actually fun.
Yeah.
What is the current block operation
Absolutely.
time?
It's so edge wallet.
Zuko. What are the current?
It's 75 seconds.
Yeah. Yep, definitely.
Yeah, 75 seconds currently.
Cool. All right, we've got another question, this time from ZCash Users Group. I'm going to, if you unmute your microphone, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, Zuko. The ZCash Community Advisory Panel, they prioritized ZCash shielded assets. Why didn't that make the roadmap this year?
Okay, there's some context in this question for the rest of you. The ZCash Community Advisory Panel expressed that they really like ZCash shielded assets, which is this thing that I briefly mentioned quite a while back about having different tokens that could be on top of the Zcash network, kind of like ERC20s, but on top of Zcash instead of on top of Ethereum. And the ECC recently put out a pair of blog posts. One was about our roadmap of proof of stake and interoperability and a new wallet, and the other was about what's the situation with these Zcash shielded assets. So I definitely encourage you to look that up. But the biggest factor I think that everyone should know is that there's another development team separate from ECC that has raised their hand and say that they are willing and able to implement that. So if they succeed at that, then someone else without ECC's permission will add that to the Zcash protocol at some point soon, I hope.
All right. Next question comes from Jim Collinson. You can unmute your mic and go ahead and ask.
Hey guys.
Your question.
Appreciate all your work. It's good stuff. It's good to hear.
Thanks.
My question is relating to not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. Do you apply that same sort of principle when it comes to regulatory compliance? I know a lot of people in various communities are sort of, it's all or nothing, especially when it comes to privacy, but how do you apply that when it comes to regulation?
I can take at least our take on this as
I'd like to hear yours.
As a software company, compliance in crypto is incredibly vague. Right? We've never ever had pure software able to provide financial services. So a lot of the compliance and a lot of the laws are really catered around custodial services, which hold money just like banks. And if you look like a bank, you smell like a bank, you taste like a bank, well, then we're going to pretty much treat you like one. So not to kind of berate the services that they're providing, they're still valuable to us, especially from fiat conversion, as Naomi was saying. But it definitely opens a lot more freedom to create unique experiences and unique products, especially like in the DeFi world, the tokens and whatnot, NFTs, that just simply don't exist with traditional financial services. So how do we take it? Like, definitely not 100%. We're not waiting to be 100% compliant because we don't even know what that looks like. and a lot of the regulators don't know what that looks like. So our take right now is we're going to run as fast as we can, so long as we're not doing anything that is clearly defying existing law. But there's no way to operate without operating in some gray area. Like in crypto and in software, you've got to have some gray area, or you won't do anything. You'll stand still. So yeah, there's some gray area, and as the regulation starts to form, it's frequently not such that you suddenly get shut down. It's like, hey, here's what you now have to do to comply, and then maybe we have to go through those efforts. And our hope is, that's probably the thing that many of the regulators don't want to hear. Hoping we grow so fast, both as a company, as an industry, as the protocols, that the regulators won't really be able to apply any meaningful regulation, because it would just be shooting their own economy in the foot, right? You don't want to apply something that would shoot down your ability for your country to operate. And once you start being dependent on the technology, and I love one of the talks you gave, Zuko, over at LibitConf, actually, about how the government used to want to ban cryptography, but now they demand it. Now they say they mandate that you have to use it if you're going to interact with a financial service. You now have to have SSL. And I think that could be our future if a lot of people start using the privacy technology, private coins, cryptocurrency in general. Then the government will start to have to actually mandate some of the things that we right now would think they're scared of.
Yeah, we saw that with the deployment of SSL that Paul mentioned earlier. There was a long period of time when certain elements of the government, like the NSA and the FBI, were tried to prevent the deployment of SSL, tried to ban it in all these different ways. Long saga. And then what seemed to be a short time later, the same government started, well, not the same people, not the NSA and the FBI, but the White House and Congress and different consumer protection regulators started requiring companies to use SSL. So I really agree with Paul that the government follows the economy and the people when it has to. And that could happen.
So run fast.
Lost my audio for a second there, so I hope that you guys will find probably just my crazy internet. We probably have time for just one more question, so I'll go to the final question we have here. We have Decred Dragon has a question. So if you wanted to go ahead and unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
Hi everyone, and thanks for the conversation. This has been really interesting. My question is just, I guess, twofold. I guess there's been a couple big Twitter accounts that have commented on a potential inflation bug, right? I'm not someone who really believes inflation's a terrible thing. Everyone in crypto thinks that inflation is just the worst. But I was wondering if you could speak to, I think it was Willy Woo recently commented on potential inflation bug in response to a common, it's obviously controversial. So if you could just address that. And then the second thing is, it seems like the proof of stake decision, is widely supported and just came on very quickly, right? It seems like that decision was made pretty quickly for a protocol that we've all, depended on to be proof of work based. Wondering how the proof of stake transition will also affect inflation, right? Will it still be 21 million, max supply, even in a proof of stake consensus mechanism?
Okay, good questions. There's this myth that Zcash is uniquely vulnerable to inflation, and it's one of those things that it's complicated. You could see some kernels of truth in it, but if somebody asked me and I only had one syllable, I would just say no, absolutely not. The Zcash has never experienced a counterfeiting bug, unlike Bitcoin, Stellar, Firo, and probably Ethereum Classic, and I could go on. But Zcash has never experienced a counterfeiting exploit, unlike those others. And we have multiple lines of defense in the protocol, including starting with that there's a zero knowledge proof on every transaction, which proves that this transaction does not inflate the monetary base. So there's already a layer of defense which says you have to break the zero knowledge proofs implementation or math or something before you can even get that far. Plus which there's another layer of defense, which is the regular turnstile mechanism, where every year or so there's a new pool. We were just talking earlier in this call about how in January there's going to be a new shielded pool. Well, there's going to be publicly visible accounting of each of the old pools and how much money went into them and out of them. And that also prevents more money coming out of old ones than should. And you can already see this if you look back at the first thing that we talked about earlier was called Sprout, and then the current thing is called Sapling. And anyway, this whole mechanism gives a on-chain, publicly, like universally verifiable second, like double check. Like if the zero knowledge proofs were somehow broken, then you would see it in this next thing, but then this next thing would catch it. And we haven't seen it in the next thing because there's never been an exploitable, or there has been an exploitable bug in Zcash, but there's never been an exploited bug in Zcash, unlike Stellar, Bitcoin, Vero, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, in one syllable, no, but in reality, like all this stuff is really dangerous and tricky, and neither Zcash nor Bitcoin nor anything can promise that there's no possible way for some attacker to exploit some future bug. But I think we have a better track record than almost any other coin, and we have better lines of defense. And the Halo upgrade that's coming in January is yet another upgrade which eliminates the trusted setup, which is yet another improvement in that, because we're never satisfied with improving monetary soundness. It's like the most important critical factor for the long run. Anyway, what's the next question? Oh yeah, is proof of stake.
About proof of stake, but before we move on to proof of stake, I just wanted to add on to your point, Zuko, because I think that's another hefty criticism that's levied against Zcash. This idea of, well, we need soundness of the money supply. We can't have an inflation bug if everything's private. How do we account for all of this? And I think a lot of people don't realize that the anonymity set of Zcash isn't across all time. It's across the lifespan of the pool.
Right.
So Sprout, the transactions in that pool had an anonymity set. It all migrated over to Sapling. When that migration happens, you get a publicly auditable account of how many Zcash are in existence and whether there has been an inflation bug. Mm-hmm. And then the same thing happens when the migration over to Halo, from Halo, whatever, to the Orchard pool. When we have the Orchard pool into the next one, there's going to be another one. So this idea that you can never get an accounting of Zcash because it's all private is just, it's incorrect. And you get that accounting every time there is one of these pool migrations.
I might have overlooked when I was ranting so eagerly a minute ago, which is that in addition to that shows you, so as a computer security person, there's detection, prevention, and remediation. These are three different things, right? You need all three of them if you're actually going to serve people well. So the turnstile mechanism you just described, it both does detection and it automatically does a kind of remediation, which is even if there were an exploit in Zcash, which there wasn't in practice, unlike on Bitcoin and Stellar and Vero and Ethereum Classic and so forth. But if there were, if there were in the past, not only would the turnstiles show us that that's happened, but they would also automatically destroy some of those old counterfeit funds, so the overall monetary base would be 21 million again.
Like you can't move which funds to destroy. Might it destroy mine?
It's first come, first serve. You can't move more money out of a pool than that pool should hold. Okay, so if there's counterfeiting in a pool, then whoever moves their money out first gets to keep their money, and whoever goes last loses their money. Which means this is another reason why it's a really good detection mechanism. Because if you were a counterfeiter in the Sprout pool, you wouldn't profit unless you moved your money out of the Sprout pool, right? Or sold it to someone else who then would have a motivation to move it out. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's kind of a technical game theoretic thing, but the bottom line is there's very, very strong evidence in Zcash, unlike all these other coins that I could name, that Zcash has never been counterfeited. And there's multiple lines of defense, and the next added line of defense is activating in January.
Yeah, so the final part of that question was the decision to move to proof of stake, and then we're going to have to wrap it up.
No, I want to keep going. Can we have another hour?
We just have to do another interview with Naomi on her channel.
Yeah.
In 5 years, because you can't have them too close together.
Only if I can buy my coffee with Zcash in New Hampshire. That's the deal.
Let's do it.
With Edge Wallet on iPhone. Okay, where was I? So there was a comment.
So many. I think we can tick all.
We can get all those ticked off within a few months.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a comment in the question that I wanted to call out with something like the decision was made really fast. Like that's that's valid because I put out that blog post saying all the reasons why I thought it was really great, and that was only a few months ago. And then the Zcash community sort of collectively didn't raise a strong objection since then. And ECC has publicly said, we're going to go ahead with developing this. But there's two ways in which it's really a long process. One is that we've been talking about this literally all along. I'm literally one of the people who thought of the concept of proof of stake before whoever those other people were in like 2014 or whatever. And we've been talking publicly and privately, like inside the company and with other people like Vitalik and others, literally all along about proof of stake. And the big thing was I was just holding off all this time on advocating for it because it was too new and we're like conservative and careful. But now there's enough other proof of stake chains that have demonstrated like long-term adult testing that I've lost my concern about that being too risky or sophisticated. And then the other way that it's really a long process is it's going to take years to define and implement and get everyone to upgrade with each other. And at any point along this time, anyone can collectively object and fork the Zcash chain and have a proof of work Zcash chain fork if they want. And if it's the biggest one, then probably everyone will go with it. So that's part of the whole process of the way these decentralized things work. So a really long process. Like it's going to end up being 10 years, I guess, since I started fantasizing about proof of stake before it activates on Zcash, which is normal. It takes 10 years to get anything good done. But anyway, the last part of your question was, does this mean adding inflation? A lot of people ask that, and maybe I'm overlooking something, but I don't, to me, they're just independent things. I don't see why proof of stake versus proof of work has any effect on max capped monetary base versus tail emission monetary base. So maybe I'll learn more as we go.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up there, guys. This has been really wonderful. I'm so excited again that Edge has integrated ZCash. I cannot wait to use it and to send the receipts to Zuko so you can see, like, yes, you can buy coffee for Zcash in New Hampshire. That'll get him excited. But this has been wonderful chatting with both of you. Congratulations, and really looking forward to seeing what happens next with privacy and giving people back control over their lives. It's a very exciting time we're living in. We're at the precipice of this financial revolution. We're all a part of it, and I couldn't be happier to be able to chat with people like yourselves who are just laying that foundation, making all this possible for everyday people.
And I have to take a moment of gratitude for Naomi for being such an educator for people in ways that are both real, like correct, accurate, and also actionable and meaningful. And to Paul for being like the front line here. Like it's the wallets that serve the actual users, and the more users, the better. That's the front line of freedom. Way to go.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Freedom! And on that note, thank you everyone who's been tuning in on our wonderful chat here in Twitter Spaces. This is also being made into a video, so this will be uploaded probably on either Electric Fund Company or Edge's channel, or maybe a mix of both, or maybe it'll be hidden forever and just go into the archives and be brought out at a later date when we finally change the world and we can say this is where it all started.
People can actually see
the
word quirks on our faces as part of the video, because right now everyone's face is just hearing us. And so, yeah,
rolling
I know, and there were a few moments there where I was like, as long as I mute my microphone, I can do whatever I want. So I'm like having a coughing fit, I'm drinking some water, and then I remember I'm like, oh, they're filming us as well. I'm glad I didn't like blow my nose into the camera there. But all the things you guys on Twitter Spaces learn when we disclose behind the scenes. But this has been really, really fun.
Yeah.
Go and enjoy yourselves. It is Thanksgiving coming up, so we can all give thanks to the people pushing privacy forward in the crypto space and the decentralized space. Go and enjoy yourselves. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone.
Thanks to all the supporters and listeners and community members and users.
Thanks to everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to us.
Go try it. Download Edge Wallet right now. Go and get some Zcash. Go and send a shielded transaction with a shielded memo and